free market capitalism. Capitalism works hand in hand with a concept that we call freedom. We have an opportunity here in our country, the United States, to sit down there and go to a different store if we choose to do that, a store that has a similar product and buy something because, in fact, we like the people there, we like the quality of the product, the brand name's different, the cost could be different. We have the opportunity, and the government doesn't tell us what to do. And the government, if you're going into business, doesn't also tell us what business to go into and what we can do in that business, at least to a large extent. Adam Smith talked about this concept a long time ago, a couple hundred years, and he came up with what he calls the invisible hand. He introduced that where a person can go in and they could go shopping. Like, for instance, they're walking down an aisle, and let's use a produce market because of the fact, Adam Smith, they probably didn't have cell phones a couple hundred years ago. So we're in the process, he's going down an aisle, and here's corn on the left-hand side. It's got a very slick vendor, well-dressed. They have a presentation of the corn, $1 a dozen. You go further down, and after being pleased by what you saw, now you come to a different vendor, and you also have corn, except now it's 75 cents a dozen, and you want to buy a couple dozen for the big feast you plan on having the next day. So you go and you check out that, you sit down, you pull down the leaf to see the quality of the kernels on the inside. You may sit down and put your thumb on one of the kernels and see how when you crush it, how much the juice comes out to see if it's fresh or if it's old. You want to look at that, and your eye spots when you're looking at that table. Further down, you see something for 50 cents a dozen. Well, you go down there, and there's a bigger crowd because the actual cost is cheaper, and you're looking at it, but it's not quite as nice. Certainly, it's not as nice as the very first vendor that was selling it for $1 a dozen or the 75 cents, but it's still a good quality, and it might pass your muster for cost and quantity and color, size, whatever the style may be. It just depends what it is. We have something very similar, and we can buy it on our cell phone. Our cell phone, we can sit down and go shopping on our cell phone much better than actually walking down an aisle and go pick and choose things. We can go shopping and find something physically made, manufactured, maybe even in a different country. We can purchase it. We can sit down and have it shipped to our house, sometimes the same day, sometimes in 3 weeks, sometimes at a high cost. Sometimes it might be a unique piece that we have over there that we get from the other side of the earth. It just depends what it might be, but we get to choose things because we have freedom to choose. It's called capitalism. It really dominates economies, certainly of the United States. England and Canada to some extent, as well as Australia. That's where the system of factors of production and distribution are privately owned and operated for profit. You'll have other economies, such as China. They don't have capitalism. They have state capitalism. We have decided among our Politburo of 500 people that we will have the following things in our economy available to all the public for them to purchase because these are the things we choose for them to have. I'm making fun of it, except I'm not really making fun of it. This is how they actually operate. They have a lot of rapid growth by demanding, we're going to do the following, boom, boom, boom. They have that over here. They don't do well in the state capitalist system for creating things. They can actually copy things well, but when it comes down to the actual creation of something new, they don't have the incentive for somebody to innovate that you'll have when you have freedom and capitalism working hand in hand. There are 4 basic rights you need to know. The right to private property, to own it. Not everybody has that. That's something that capitalistic countries have. The right to own a business and keep all that business profits. At the time of this recording, our federal tax base is 21%. In California, it's 8.77% for taxes. Let's round it to 9. So we're paying about 30% profit for everything that you sell. Now, that sounds like a lot, and quite frankly, it probably is, except when you start comparing it to other countries. You'll see some countries, 50% to 70% is common, where for the money they're making, they need to fund the state more in the process to help keep that country floating because they have a huge socialist system. But by this aspect of owning the business and keeping the profits, that is unique a lot to the capitalistic countries. We have the right to freedom of competition. You may go down the street and want to have a pizza store, and there's a pizza store right there. You may want to put a pizza store next to the pizza store because your pizza's better. You have freedom to choose that competition to locate there. You certainly will not make the people next door friendly or happy to see you, except for the fact it might improve both by the time it's all done. And then you have freedom of choice because you as a consumer, you can decide which pizza that you want to have that day, or maybe you want to get one of both. It just depends how hungry you are, and it depends as to what the makeup is and how starving you are, especially when you pull up and you have the two pizza competitions and the scent drifting into your car. So by the time it's all done, you have these 4 basic rights. Here's a family. They went out, they decided to establish their own business, and they have a lot of room to grow. They call this place Flowers and Weeds. Roosevelt also added 4 additional freedoms to the original 4 that we just mentioned. Freedom of speech and expression. Now, we already had that in our Bill of Rights, but however, putting it here actually does connotate the even stronger aspect of it. Freedom to worship in your own way, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. I have to tell you, these 4 things are part of the American way and part of the American tradition, and it all goes hand in hand with freedom and capitalism. How free markets work, consumers send signals what they like and what they want and how much you're willing to pay for it. Well, the more money they're willing to pay for it, the more people that want to produce it because they want to make a profit off the aspect of it. So you have the circular flow model because of the fact you have the consumers wanting things and people wanting to make money, and they're willing to sell it or make it to make certain they can get that profit in the process. So you want to sit down and look at different aspects. Let's say, for instance, selling shirts. A seller would be happy to sell shirts for $50. It cost me $7 to make this shirt. Wow, and I can sell for $50. Oh, $43 profit for each shirt. Well, the problem is, number one, I would suspect on a $50 shirt, you're going to probably spend more than $7 in materials and labor to make it. The other part is, how many people are willing to pay $50 for a shirt? Just depends who they are and what the marketplace is, where you're living, the location, the different aspects, what the competition is. We'll talk more about that as we proceed through our course here. But so the seller lowers your price. What's going to happen is the quantity demanded is likely to increase because of the fact it's not 50. I'll make mine 40. Well, he's going to make his 40. I'm going to make mine 25. Well, no, over here, I'm going to make mine. I got the same quality he does, and I'm going to sell mine for $19.95. Whoa! And the people run out the door ready to buy that $19.95 shirt that was once upon a time sold for $50. We call this concept supply and demand, and the point where they start selling items, we call that the equilibrium point. My very first job out of college, I was a manager of a Minnesota fabric store. It was fabrics. I went through a training program. I had my own store finally. We cranked out over $1 million in sales several years ago when that was a big to-do. I would get fabric in the door, and it might be flat fold around bolts, but let me use the flat fold as an example. We would take the fabric out there. There was no bolts in it. We would stack it onto the table, and we put a price on it for $2.99 a yard. So people would come in, they'd look at it, and we'd have some people, especially those with a finer taste in things in life, they would buy several yards of it because they wanted to be the coolest people in their block in their sewing endeavors. And so after about a week, though, the nicer stuff was gone, so we would sit down and reduce the price to $1.99. Well, people would come in, they saw the price would drop. We'd sell a lot more of it. The same fabric on the same table. You could see the stacks. We had 8 stacks on a table like this, and they'd be down over here and everything. And so we'd sell it there. And at the end of the week, we would be picked over again. So I dropped the price from $2.99. Wait a minute, I was $1.99, and I dropped the price to 99 cents a yard. People would come back and say, look at this, and they would buy some more. And then the next week, it'd be down to 2 yards for $1. It all came out of exactly the same box. It was all the same supplier. It was all the same manufacturer, but the colors were different. The thickness was different sometimes, and you'd have that. And the market price would change because of the quality of the product would diminish, but I could drop the price and stimulate the demand. Here's a supply curve. The supply curve is what the people that produce the product look at in the aspect of, gee, if I get this product in the back door, how much can I sell it for and make a profit? The more I can sell it for, the more profit I'm going to make. Well, the consumer comes in the front door instead of the back door, they're looking at the front door, and they're saying, oh, that's really high. Over here, I can get this over here. It looks the same. I can get it for a lot cheaper over here. If I buy it on a bolt, it's going to cost this much money here, but on a flat full table, oh, it's $199. I know that same stuff is $899 at that bolt over there. This is cheaper. What a good deal. And so they buy it because the fact that they want something where they're meeting, where you have that demand and supply curve, where they meet, we call that the equilibrium point, where you have a meeting of the minds between the person selling and the person buying. You also have 4 different types of capitalism. You have perfect competition. There's a lot of people in the market over here. It's relatively inexpensive to get in the market because we're selling corn, corn, corn. Yes, I like corn so much that if I don't have some, I'm going to stalk out of here. I know, I'm giving you an earful, but anyhow, so you look at this aspect over here. You also have something, we call it a monopolistic competition, where there's a large number of sellers producing something very similar, but it takes more money to get into the market as a supplier. So you have, it's not quite as many people as in perfect competition, where a lot of people can get in and out of the market easily, but they're producing a product and they're trying to have product differentiation. My product over here has this, and my product has this over here, and my product has this. And then eventually you get to the point where it takes a large amount of money to get into the marketplace. How many companies on planet Earth make a full-size pickup truck? You know, you might have 20. It's probably realistically more like 12 or maybe even less than that. But because it takes at least $1 billion to sit down and have a production line to produce a full-size truck. To be that physically big, to crank out something so physically big and so expensive, you only have a few companies, and when you have that, we call that an oligopoly. And then you also have a monopoly, which you'll see a lot of time in utilities. It would be foolish to have 7 different companies selling electricity in your neighborhood because you have to have 7 different lines running all over the place. It'd be super expensive, so the cities and government, they regulate the aspect for monopolies. The benefits allows for open competition. The limits, sometimes you do have an inequality because some people can sit there and corner the market on certain things. The things I want you to know: capitalism, authoritarian capitalism like China, supply, demand, equilibrium, and the 4 different types that we have of free market capitalism, of perfect competition, monopolistic competition, the oligopoly, and the monopoly. Free market capitalism and freedom, it's the cornerstone of the American economy. Take care.